Ballyclare District Historical Memorial Association. Colonel Edward James Saunderson. Colonel Edward James Saunderson was once the English face of unionism and a prominent Orangeman, known for his staunch opposition to Home Rule. The original leader of Irish unionism and the most prominent defender of Irish landlords has suffered undue neglect. Edward Carson, the opponent of Home Rule in 1912, can be ceremonially resurrected at political functions. Yet we fail to celebrate Colonel Saunderson in such ceremonies. We, from a tradition that looks to the past for political legitimisation. Carson distanced himself from the murkier northern politics, while Saunderson, by contrast, held on to the leadership of the Irish Unionist Party after the defeat of the Second Home Rule Bill. Edward James Saunderson was born at the family seat of Castle Saunderson, near Belturbet in County Cavan, on the 1st of October 1837. The youngest son of Colonel Alexander Saunderson of Scotland, a Tory MP for Cavan, and the Honourable Sarah Juliana Maxwell, eldest daughter of the Reverend Henry Maxwell. Saunderson was educated abroad, mainly in Nice and by private tutors. He developed a passion for yachting and had a talent for sketching caricatures. On his father's passing in 1857, his mother ensured that her favourite son Edward was the principal heir to his father's estates, inheriting 1,200 acres, which were mainly in Cavan with 100 acres in Fermanagh. The Colonel was an evangelical Anglican and loved to preach the gospel in the little church on his estate. Edward was a Justice of the Peace and Deputy Lieutenant for Cavan and appointed as High Sheriff in 1859. In 1862, he had joined the 4th Battalion Royal Irish Fusiliers and ranked Major in 1875. He became a colonel in 1886 and was in command of the battalion from 1891 to 1893. In 1882, the colonel publicly announced his adherence to the Orange Order and was one of the signatories of the manifesto of the Ulster Defence Union, launched to oppose the Home Rule Bill. As a committed unionist, Saunderson supported the Orange Orders in Ireland and around the world, serving as the Grand Master of the Orange Lodge in Belfast from 1901 to 1903. In 1884, Edward published a paper titled The Two Irelands, Loyalty versus Treason, with the sole aim of sharing the Loyalists' views of the recent hate speeches at the National League's demonstrations. And he frequently threatened that Loyalists would put up an armed resistance not just against nationalist threat, but against those that may abandon us to the enemy. Saunderson was a founding member and the first leader of the Irish Unionist Alliance, a political party that hoped to galvanise unionist support across Ireland. Although some perceived accounts of his relations with the Irish nationalist MPs as a bit friendly, there was a real bitterness to his description of them as 86 arguments against Home Rule, and his statement that under an Irish Parliament, Loyalists would indeed rise to the highest positions, but with a rope around their necks. He was known as a man loyal to his beliefs, respected by those who differed strongly to him, but also admired his honesty and sincerity. A true gentleman. On the 22nd of June 1865, Saunderson married Helena de Mollins and they had 4 sons and 1 daughter. 1 year after the First Ladies' Orange Lodge was formed in London, the Honourable Mrs. Saunderson invited 17 ladies of Clones to her home at Castle Saunderson, where her husband spoke of the work of the women of Ireland helping on the cause of loyalty and order. Afterwards, Mrs. Saunderson spoke on her plans to grow the Ladies' Orange Order through Cavan and then the rest of Ireland. Their eldest son, Somerset, briefly achieved political prominence in 1916 when he led an abortive attempt to rouse Cavan and Monaghan unionist opposition to Carson's acceptance of a proposed compromise based on six-county partition. He left the Castle Saunderson in 1920 because of IRA threats, and he died in England in 1927. Castle Saunderson has been declared as one of the most at-risk historical buildings in Ireland. In 1997, the castle and grounds were bought by Scouting Ireland with the vision to restoring and using the castle. Instead, Scouting Ireland chose to build a brand new £3.7 million centre on the castle grounds, with funding from the EU and support from the American Ireland Fund. The castle was then acquired by a forestry company owned by the Irish state, and they have no desire to refurbish such a castle with its history and heritage enriched with such a prominent unionist family as the Saundersons, instead letting it crumble to the ground. Maybe it is the hope that our history will be forgotten and disappear within the castle ruins. Edward's beloved church on the grounds of the castle has disgustingly suffered much damage due to vandalism. But most horrifically, in 2009, the urns holding the ashes of members of the Saunderson family were damaged and their ashes thrown all over the ground. There was concern that the lead from the coffins could have been stolen, but the guard at the time said that no bodies or coffins were missing. Edward's headstone is still intact, but his beloved home, his much-loved church are both damaged and left in such disrepair. But more disturbingly, his family crypt has been desecrated. We must ask ourselves why such a historical building with a heritage rich in unionism and Protestantism in Ireland is being left to ruin. Is it the hope of the Irish state that our history will also be erased? Colonel Edward Saunderson died on October the 21st, 1906 at his home from pneumonia. On the 29th of May 1910, a statue was erected in Portadown, symbolising his famous statement, "Home Rule may pass through Parliament, but it will never pass the bridge at Portadown." The statue is a local orange icon, adorning a sash every 12th of July. The Belfast newsletter reported that the statue was erected on the day of a magnificent unionist demonstration. Those who spoke remembered his courage and sense of duty as a leader to the people of the unionist movement.